When I'm working with these toned papers, it's really important that I start to figure out how to let the paper do the work for me. One thing we want to try right away is there's two sides of the paper. There's a bumpy side, which is called the toothy side, and there's a smooth side. The smooth side has a sticker on it. The company intends you to use the bumpy side, and it will have a fuzzy look kind of like this. The smooth side will give you more control. I don't care which side you draw on, but what I would suggest is do a pressure scale gradient first and see which side you like the feel of better. That way we're not fighting. If you're having problems with the tooth, you're not fighting against the tooth over the course of the drawing. So that's the first thing. Now the really important things is remembering how to use value relativity to your advantage. Relative to as dark as the Conte can get, the paper will look pretty bright. So remember, your brain doesn't see absolute value. It says, well, this is brighter than that, so it's bright. It doesn't see brighter than, it just sees bright. And relative to the white, it's quite a bit darker than, but your brain doesn't see darker than, it just sees dark. And you'll see that this gray here looks darker than that gray there, even though you just watched me color it in, and it's just the same gray. So that's the first thing. That means when I'm drawing a dark object, like this handle here, there's no value in there, even though that's a highlight, there's no value in there that's anywhere near brighter than the paper. So I need to learn to draw around the paper and try and get the paper to be the darks. Doing a real quick crappy job. You'll see actually that's not even dark enough, so to get the highlights on that I'll probably have to color in even a little bit more to get the highlights to work. On a white object or a light object like the skull, the shadows are definitely not any darker than the paper, so I want to learn to draw around the shadows with enough bright. I'm drawing this part here. Same with that crack there. I think I can probably get the paper to be dark enough to handle the crack. This paper can handle its crack. Yeah, for sure. And then even some of the reflected light in here, I could be doing with fairly light applications. Now I don't have as much control in Photoshop with this fake Conte as we would in real life. So when we're sketching in a drawing like this, we want to be really careful that in an area where we have dark edges, I'm going to go ahead and sketch it in lightly with the black. And again, I'm going to try and take that largely shape-based approach. But I can have some line. Areas where I'm unsure, I'll just go ahead and leave it. I know this is going to be a dark edge here. Down here, I'm not sure. For here, for sure, it's dark. There's, oops, I meant to switch to white there. There's definitely some lights going on down here. I think the table can, or the paper can handle the shadows on the blanket. I mean, you should be taking more time than this. I just don't want to waste your entire day with the demo. So I'm blocking it in. Now the pear here, that's light, and I don't want to just do a line drawing. Remember, I want to get it blocked in as a series of value. I think the paper can handle the midtones, but on this side I do think it gets darker. It's definitely darker all throughout here. I don't know about up there. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's darker, but I'm going to be safe. Notice I'm still, even as fast as I'm going, working with some sense of directional mark making. As I get to the skull, what I would really suggest is that you do a quick gesture drawing like this to get the basic placement, but still switching. Like if you're doing an edge that you think is going to be dark, switch over to the black pencil, like over here. You know, maybe that's going to be dark. This thing's going to be dark. So the more you can approach it in shape and value, the better. If you need to make little line marks like I did to get general placement, that's fine. But switching back and forth between the pencils to make sure you get everything in the appropriate value. As I come into the sheet here, I'm pretty sure the whole thing's going to be darker than the paper, but for right now I'm just going to map in the wrinkles, and that will help me. That will help me further emphasize the bottom of the skull there. Alright, so this is just notational drawing for value. And I'm swapping back and forth between the two values. There's definitely a big dark shape here. And that's the idea. I mean, for you all, I would go a little bit slower. I'm going pretty fast for the demo. Pretty sloppy. But the general idea holds about switching back and forth. And it's really important that you set up the dark objects. I would not put any light on a dark object until the last 15-20 minutes of the drawing, when you realize you just can't get the paper to handle the highlights. I wouldn't put any dark on a light object like the skull until the last 15-20 minutes, when you realize you just can't get the paper to be dark enough. Objects like this that are somewhere in the middle, I would try and leave as much paper as possible until the end. Just get some little highlights here. You know, maybe some little dark down the middle, but it's mostly just luster points. And then add white as needed. Like maybe you'll have to switch and have a little bit of dark here. But how much can you get the paper to do with those values? Also remember, you don't ever want to, when you're creating a gradient, have the white and the black touch like that. The paper should fill that middle 50% of the gradient. Okay, so if I have this value scale like this, the paper handles the middle 10% of like 45 to 55% gray. And if you're ever tempted to blend the two pencils into each other, don't do it. It'll make a nasty bluish gray when our paper's a warm gray. If you're tempted to do that, that's exactly the type of area that you need to leave with just the paper showing. So those are some basic hints about how to use the paper. Think about the value relativity. How do you make the paper function as both dark, so shadows on light objects, or just, you know, mid-tone values? Make it function as light, like a highlight on the dark, or like over in this area here, have it be a mid-tone. Your brain can perceive it 3 different ways depending on what's surrounding it. And then don't bleed the pencils together on gradients. Leave space between them. Now on an area like the skull here, you could have some light. I'm going too bright, but you could have some white right against some black, because it's a very sharp contrast on that edge there. That's okay to put them right next to each other. I would be hesitant about where you do that and how frequently you do that, but definitely don't ever mix them together.